The role of Western powers in Africa, opportunity or exploitation. Welcome to the Bold African Voice, BAV, where we break down the narratives shaping Africa's future. I'm Abdul Karim Kargbo, born and raised in Africa. Today, we critically examine the West's role in Africa, past, present, and future. How can Africa leverage global engagement for sustainable progress? Let's dive into the heart of this pressing issue. Botswana's President Duma Boko, during a Reuters Next newsmaker interview at the World Economic Forum in Davos, expressed a thought-provoking perspective on Africa's geopolitical dynamics. He remarked that the West has every reason to play its part in Africa, because if it doesn't, there are others who will want to play some part. The comment, emphasizing the strategic competition between global powers such as China and the West for influence on the continent, underscores the complex interplay of interests shaping Africa's future. Africa as the battleground for global influence. Africa, rich in resources and home to rapidly growing economies, has increasingly become a focal point for global powers. China's deepening presence is evidenced by extensive infrastructure investments through the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, soft power strategies, and burgeoning trade relations. According to the Brookings Institution, Sino-African trade exceeded $254 billion in 2021, making China Africa's largest trading partner. On the other hand, the West, particularly the United States and the European Union, has historically been involved in Africa through aid, trade agreements, and development projects. However, the West's influence has been waning as Africa diversifies its partnerships. President Boko's remarks are a clarion call for Western nations to re-engage more effectively and meaningfully in Africa, not only to counterbalance China but also to address African needs in a mutually beneficial manner. Western strategy, a comparative lens. Western countries have often been criticized for their aid-based approach to Africa, which some argue perpetuates dependency rather than fostering sustainable development. Conversely, China's model, often lauded for delivering immediate infrastructure, has faced scrutiny for creating debt vulnerabilities among African nations. For example, Zambia's recent debt restructuring, heavily influenced by Chinese loans, highlights the precarious financial implications of such partnerships, BBC News, 2023. In comparison, the European Union has attempted a recalibration of its strategy through the Global Gateway Initiative, which aims to mobilize EUR 300 billion for infrastructure development globally, including Africa. This initiative is positioned as a transparent and sustainable alternative to China's BRI. Yet questions remain about its implementation and whether it can meet the scale of Africa's infrastructure deficit. The African perspective, beyond geopolitical rivalry. From an African standpoint, the continent's priorities should be the central determinant of any external engagement. As noted by the African Union's Agenda 2063, Africa seeks to achieve economic integration, technological advancement, and self-reliance. Partnerships should therefore align with these goals rather than merely serve as instruments for global competition. Countries like Rwanda have demonstrated the potential for transformative partnerships. By leveraging aid and investment strategically, Rwanda has become a model of sustainable development. The nation's success suggests that African countries can and should negotiate partnerships that prioritize local ownership, capacity building, and long-term benefits. Forward-looking strategies for the West. For the West to remain relevant in Africa, it must transition from being perceived as a patron to becoming a partner. This involves several key shifts. 1. Trade over aid. Western nations should prioritize trade partnerships that enhance value addition within Africa. For instance, rather than exporting raw materials, Africa should be supported in developing industries that process its resources locally. 2. Technology transfer. Addressing Africa's technological divide should be a cornerstone of Western engagement. Initiatives such as fostering innovation hubs and supporting digital transformation will equip African nations to compete globally. 3. Addressing climate change. Given the disproportionate impact of climate change on Africa, the West must fulfill its commitments to climate financing and support African-led green initiatives. 4. Youth engagement. With Africa's youthful population set to double by 2050, UNDSA 2022, targeted programs in education, entrepreneurship, and employment will be critical for harnessing this demographic dividend. 5. Institutional strengthening. Building robust governance frameworks and supporting democracy will ensure that partnerships yield equitable benefits and reduce vulnerabilities to exploitation. Broader African context. Learning from history. Historically, Africa's engagements with external powers have often been marred by exploitative practices and unfulfilled promises. For instance, the Berlin Conference of 1884-85 divided the continent without regard to its people's aspirations, creating a legacy of conflict and underdevelopment. Today, African leaders must leverage lessons from the past to negotiate terms that protect their nation's sovereignty and developmental goals. The African Renaissance. Seizing the moment. The onus is now on African leaders to position the continent as a proactive rather than reactive player in the global arena. As global powers vie for influence, Africa must leverage its bargaining power, rooted in its vast natural resources, growing markets, and strategic geopolitical location. By fostering regional unity and leveraging multilateral institutions like the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, African nations can negotiate from a position of collective strength. AfCFTA, which connects over 1.4 billion people across 55 member states with a combined GDP of $3.4 trillion, World Bank 2022, represents a historic opportunity to transform Africa's economic landscape. The agreement aims to eliminate trade barriers, harmonize regulatory frameworks, and promote intra-African trade. By strengthening regional supply chains, AfCFTA can reduce dependency on external markets, thus limiting the influence of external powers. Learning from Asian economies. Africa can draw valuable lessons from Asian economies that have successfully navigated global power dynamics. For example, Southeast Asian nations under the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, have demonstrated the power of regional collaboration to drive economic growth while maintaining sovereignty. ASEAN's ability to engage both China and the West without becoming overly reliant on either is a model worth emulating. Similarly, India's strategic diplomacy showcases how nations can attract foreign investment while preserving domestic interests. India's emphasis on developing indigenous industries, such as its IT sector, has enabled it to benefit from globalization without compromising its economic independence, addressing Africa's structural challenges. While external partnerships are critical, internal structural reforms are equally important for Africa to maximize its potential. Many African countries face challenges such as weak governance, inadequate infrastructure, and limited industrial capacity. Addressing these issues will not only enhance the continent's attractiveness as an investment destination, but also reduce the risk of exploitation by external powers. 1. Governance and accountability. Strengthening democratic institutions and combating corruption must remain a priority. Transparent governance will attract investors and ensure that resources are utilized for the benefit of the population. 2. Education and skill development. Investing in education is vital to equip Africa's burgeoning youth population with the skills needed for a modern economy. Countries like Kenya, through its digital literacy program, have demonstrated how education can drive technological adoption and economic growth. 3. Infrastructure development. Bridging Africa's infrastructure gap is crucial for economic integration. While external funding is necessary, governments must ensure that such investments do not compromise national interests. Public-private partnerships and innovative financing models like sovereign wealth funds can help mobilize resources without creating unsustainable debt. 4. Agricultural transformation. Agriculture, employing over 60% of Africa's workforce, remains the backbone of many economies. By adopting modern farming techniques, improving access to markets, and addressing climate-related challenges, Africa can achieve food security and become a net exporter of agricultural products. The role of multilateralism. Multilateral organizations like the African Union, AU, and the United Nations, UN, play a pivotal role in ensuring that Africa's voice is heard on the global stage. Initiatives such as the AU's Agenda 2063 provide a comprehensive blueprint for achieving Africa's socio-economic transformation. However, effective implementation will require stronger coordination between member states and adequate funding mechanisms. Moreover, Africa's engagement with global institutions like the World Trade Organization, WTO, and the International Monetary Fund, IMF, must reflect its priorities. For instance, advocating for fair trade practices and equitable debt restructuring mechanisms will ensure that Africa benefits from globalization without being marginalized. The environmental dimension. Africa's vast natural resources make it a critical player in the global fight against climate change. From the Congo Basin rainforest, often referred to as the lungs of the earth, to its abundant renewable energy potential, Africa holds the key to a sustainable future. However, these resources have often been exploited without benefiting the continent. Western nations must fulfill their commitments under the Paris Agreement, including providing $100 billion annually in climate finance to developing countries. These funds should prioritize African-led initiatives such as the Great Green Wall Project, which aims to combat desertification and create jobs across the Sahel region. The digital frontier, Africa's next growth catalyst. Africa's digital economy represents an untapped frontier with transformative potential. According to the International Finance Corporation, IFC, the internet economy in Africa could contribute $180 billion to the continent's GDP by 2025, equivalent to 5.2% of total GDP. With over 40% of Africa's population under the age of 15 and increasing mobile penetration, the digital revolution is reshaping industries and providing opportunities for innovation. Key drivers of Africa's digital growth. 1. Fintech innovations. Mobile money platforms, such as Kenya's M-Pesa, have revolutionized financial inclusion, enabling millions of unbanked individuals to access financial services. Expanding these services across rural areas can further stimulate economic activity. 2. E-commerce expansion. Platforms like Jumia are capitalizing on Africa's growing internet penetration to create digital marketplaces, connecting local businesses to consumers. Strengthening logistical infrastructure and payment systems will be critical to sustaining this growth. 3. Tech hubs. Africa is now home to over 600 tech hubs, with ecosystems in Lagos, Nairobi, and Cape Town leading the charge. These hubs foster innovation, entrepreneurship, and job creation in sectors ranging from agriculture to healthcare. 4. Data infrastructure. Investing in data centers, cloud services, and connectivity will ensure that Africa's digital economy remains competitive globally. Collaborative efforts such as the African Union's Digital Transformation Strategy for Africa, 2020-2030, aim to build an inclusive and sustainable digital ecosystem. The geopolitical implications of Africa's digital growth. The rise of Africa's digital economy is attracting significant global attention. China has played a leading role in building digital infrastructure across the continent, particularly through companies like Huawei, which has installed extensive telecom networks. Meanwhile, the West, led by the United States and Europe, is increasingly recognizing the strategic importance of Africa's digital space. However, this competition has raised concerns about data sovereignty and cybersecurity. African governments must establish robust regulatory frameworks to protect citizens' data and ensure that partnerships with foreign tech firms prioritize local interests. For instance, Nigeria's National Data Protection Regulation, NDPR, serves as a model for balancing digital growth with privacy protections. Africa's rising role in global governance. As Africa's economic and political significance grows, its representation in global governance structures must reflect its rising stature. Currently, Africa's voice in organizations like the United Nations Security Council, UNSC, remains underrepresented. The African Union's call for permanent seats in the UNSC highlights the need for a more equitable global order. Additionally, Africa's participation in shaping global trade and climate policies is critical. For instance, during the COP27 Climate Summit in Egypt, African leaders emphasized the need for greater financing to address climate vulnerabilities. Such platforms provide an opportunity for Africa to assert its priorities and demand accountability from developed nations. Leveraging the African diaspora. The African diaspora, estimated at over 150 million people globally, represents a powerful asset for the continent. From remittances to knowledge transfer, the diaspora plays a critical role in driving development. In 2022, remittances to sub-Saharan Africa reached $53 billion, according to the World Bank, surpassing foreign direct investment in many countries. Diaspora engagement can be enhanced through targeted policies such as dual citizenship programs, investment incentives, and platforms for collaboration. Initiatives like Ghana's Year of Return campaign, which attracted global attention, demonstrate the potential of the diaspora to contribute to Africa's socio-economic transformation. Education and human capital development, the cornerstone of progress. Africa's long-term growth hinges on its ability to harness the potential of its young population through education and skill development. The continent's youth bulge, projected to constitute over 40% of the global workforce by 2100, UN Population Division, is both a challenge and an opportunity. Investing in quality education and vocational training is essential to ensure that this demographic dividend drives economic transformation rather than becoming a source of social instability. Critical areas for educational reform: 1. Primary and secondary education. Universal access to quality basic education remains a priority. Programs like Ethiopia's General Education Quality Improvement Project, GEQUIP, funded by the World Bank, have demonstrated success in improving enrollment rates and learning outcomes. 2. Higher education and research. Universities across Africa must focus on producing graduates with skills aligned to market demands. Partnerships between African universities and global institutions can foster innovation and research. For example, the collaboration between the University of Cape Town and the African Research Universities Alliance, ARUA, is building capacity for cutting-edge research. 3. Technical and vocational education and training, TVET. Expanding TVET programs can address skills mismatches and equip youth for jobs in sectors such as manufacturing, agriculture, and technology. Countries like Rwanda and Morocco have integrated TVET into their national development strategies with significant results. 4. Digital literacy. Given the rapid digitalization of economies, incorporating ICT education from an early age is critical. Initiatives like South Africa's Operation Fakisa, which integrates digital skills training into school curricula, can serve as a blueprint for other nations. Bridging the gender gap in education. Closing the gender gap in education is imperative for sustainable development. Girls' education, often hindered by cultural, financial, and infrastructural barriers, has far-reaching benefits for societies. Studies by UNESCO show that a single year of secondary education for girls can increase their future earnings by up to 20%. Programs like CAMFED, Campaign for Female Education, have successfully addressed these challenges by providing scholarships, mentorship, and community support for girls in rural areas. Scaling up such programs across Africa will empower women and contribute to broader socio-economic progress. Healthcare as a pillar of development. A healthy population is a prerequisite for economic productivity and social stability. Africa has made significant strides in combating diseases like malaria, HIV, AIDS, and tuberculosis. However, the continent still faces persistent challenges, including inadequate healthcare infrastructure, low funding, and limited access to essential medicines. Strategies for strengthening Africa's healthcare systems. 1. Universal health coverage, UHC. Governments must prioritize affordable and accessible healthcare. Rwanda's Mutuelle de Santé scheme, which provides health insurance to over 90% of its population, serves as a model for achieving UHC in resource-constrained settings. 2. Public-private partnerships, PPPs. Collaborations between governments and private entities can bridge gaps in funding and service delivery. For example, Nigeria's partnership with pharmaceutical companies to improve vaccine distribution has enhanced immunization rates. 3. Strengthening local pharmaceutical production. Africa imports over 80% of its pharmaceuticals, making it vulnerable to supply chain disruptions. Initiatives like the African Medicines Agency, AMA, aim to enhance regulatory capacity and support local production of essential drugs. 4. Investment in primary healthcare. Strengthening primary healthcare systems can prevent the escalation of diseases and reduce the burden on tertiary facilities. Countries like Ghana, through its Community-Based Health Planning and Services (CHPS) initiative, have made progress in this regard. Africa's role in shaping the future of global health. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed the vulnerabilities of global health systems and highlighted Africa's potential as a key player in addressing global health crises. African institutions like the Africa CDC and collaborations such as the mRNA Vaccine Technology Transfer Hub in South Africa are examples of how the continent is stepping up to meet global health challenges. Sustainable development and climate resilience. Africa's double imperative. Africa's future hinges not only on economic growth, but also on achieving sustainability and climate resilience. As the continent most vulnerable to climate change impacts, Africa faces rising temperatures, unpredictable rainfall patterns, and more frequent extreme weather events. These challenges threaten agricultural productivity, water security, and livelihoods, particularly in rural areas where over 60% of the population depends on agriculture, FAO. Building climate resilience. 1. Green energy transition. Africa has immense renewable energy potential with abundant solar, wind, and hydro resources. Projects like Morocco's Noor Ouarzazate Solar Complex, the world's largest concentrated solar farm, illustrate the continent's capacity to lead in clean energy. Scaling up such initiatives can address Africa's energy deficit while reducing its carbon footprint. 2. Sustainable agriculture. Adopting climate-smart agricultural practices is essential to ensure food security. Technologies like drought-resistant crops and precision farming are being deployed in countries such as Kenya and Ethiopia, with promising results. 3. Water management. Efficient water management systems such as rainwater harvesting and desalination plants can mitigate water scarcity. For instance, Namibia's Windhoek Reclamation Plant, which recycles wastewater into potable water, serves as a global benchmark for water sustainability. 4. Reforestation efforts. Initiatives like the Great Green Wall, which aims to restore 100 million hectares of degraded land across 11 countries in the Sahel region, are critical for combating desertification and promoting biodiversity. Financing Africa's green transition. One of the biggest obstacles to Africa's climate resilience is the lack of adequate financing. Although developed nations committed to providing $100 billion annually to developing countries under the Paris Agreement, actual disbursements remain far below the pledged amounts. Africa must advocate for increased climate financing during global summits like COP28, ensuring that funds are directed toward local solutions rather than externally imposed projects. Moreover, innovative financing mechanisms, such as green bonds and carbon credits, can unlock private investment. Countries like South Africa have issued green bonds to fund renewable energy projects, setting an example for others to follow. Regional cooperation for environmental sustainability. Climate change is a transboundary issue requiring collective action. Regional organizations like the African Union, AU, and economic blocs such as ECOWAS and SADC must enhance collaboration on environmental policies, resource sharing, and disaster management. For example, the Niger Basin Authority brings together 9 countries to manage shared water resources, demonstrating the power of cooperative frameworks. The role of technology in transforming Africa's development pathway. Technology is a game changer for addressing Africa's pressing challenges, from food security to healthcare and education. Emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, AI, blockchain, and drone technology are already being leveraged across the continent. 1. Agriculture. AI-powered platforms such as Ghana's Isoko provide farmers with market prices, weather forecasts, and agronomic tips, increasing productivity and income. 2. Healthcare. Drone technology, pioneered by companies like Zipline in Rwanda and Ghana, is revolutionizing the delivery of medical supplies to remote areas. 3. Education. E-learning platforms like Iniza Education are breaking down barriers to education by providing affordable learning resources via mobile phones. 4. Governance. Blockchain technology is being explored to enhance transparency in elections and public service delivery, as seen in Sierra Leone's blockchain-based election trial. Africa's voice in the global digital economy. As Africa embraces technological advancement, its role in shaping global digital policies is growing. The continent must advocate for equitable access to digital resources and fair participation in global tech governance forums, such as the International Telecommunication Union, ITU. Additionally, partnerships with global tech firms must prioritize local capacity building and technology transfer. For example, Microsoft's Africa Development Center, ADC, aims to train African engineers and develop solutions tailored to the continent's needs. Cultural renaissance, Africa's soft power potential. Africa's rich cultural heritage encompassing music, art, film, and fashion is an untapped source of soft power and economic growth. The global influence of African culture has surged in recent years, with phenomena like Afrobeat dominating international music charts and Nollywood emerging as a leading film industry. This cultural renaissance offers Africa a unique opportunity to project its identity on the world stage while generating significant economic benefits. Key drivers of Africa's cultural renaissance. 1. Music and entertainment. African artists such as Burna Boy, Wizkid, and Angelique Kidjo have brought Afrobeat and other African music genres to global prominence. Platforms like Boomplay and Spotify Africa are capitalizing on this growth, providing local artists with access to international audiences. 2. Film and storytelling. Nollywood, now the second largest film industry in the world, produces over 2,500 films annually. Streaming platforms such as Netflix are investing heavily in African content, with original productions like Blood and Water, highlighting the continent's storytelling potential. 3. Fashion and design. African designers are making waves in global fashion, drawing inspiration from traditional textiles and patterns. Initiatives like Africa Fashion Week provide a platform for showcasing this creativity while promoting sustainable fashion practices. 4. Cultural festivals. Events like Ghana's Chaliwote Street Art Festival and Senegal's Biennale de Dakar celebrate African art and culture, attracting tourists and boosting local economies. Monetizing cultural assets. To maximize the economic benefits of its cultural renaissance, Africa must invest in the creative economy. According to UNESCO, creative industries account for over 3% of global GDP and employ 30 million people worldwide. Africa, however, contributes only a fraction to this total due to limited investment and inadequate intellectual property, IP protections. Strategies for growth. Strengthening IP laws. Protecting the rights of creators and artists is critical for encouraging innovation and ensuring fair compensation. Countries like South Africa have made progress with updated copyright legislation, but more widespread reforms are needed. Infrastructure development. Investing in production studios, theaters, and art galleries will support local creators and attract international collaborations. Training and capacity building. Establishing institutions focused on creative arts education can nurture talent and equip the next generation of African artists with the skills needed to succeed globally. Public-private partnerships. Collaborations between governments and private entities can provide funding and marketing support for cultural projects. Leveraging culture for diplomacy. Africa's cultural assets are not just an economic resource but also a powerful tool for diplomacy. Through cultural exchange programs, exhibitions, and festivals, African nations can foster mutual understanding and strengthen their ties with other countries. Initiatives like the Pan-African Cultural Congress and African Heritage Fund are vital for preserving and promoting Africa's cultural legacy. Addressing challenges to Africa's cultural growth. Despite its potential, Africa's cultural industries face several challenges, including limited access to funding, underdeveloped markets, and the marginalization of traditional art forms. Governments and stakeholders must address these issues through targeted interventions and inclusive policies. For instance, rural artisans and performers often struggle to access global markets due to logistical and financial barriers. Programs like Made in Africa, which connect local craftspeople with international buyers, demonstrate how technology and innovation can bridge these gaps. Africa's role in shaping the future of global culture. As the demand for diverse voices and perspectives grows, Africa is uniquely positioned to influence global culture. By celebrating its heritage and investing in its creative industries, the continent can redefine narratives, challenge stereotypes, and take its rightful place as a leader in cultural innovation. Africa's infrastructure revolution, bridging the connectivity gap. Infrastructure development remains a cornerstone of Africa's transformation. Roads, railways, ports, and power grids are critical to unlocking economic potential, enhancing regional integration, and reducing poverty. While progress has been made in recent years, the African Development Bank, AFDB, estimates that the continent still faces an infrastructure financing gap of $68,108 billion annually. Key areas of focus for infrastructure development. 1. Transport networks. Efficient transport systems are essential for reducing the cost of trade and improving market access. Projects like the Standard Gauge Railway, SGR, in Kenya and Tanzania's Rufiji hydropower project demonstrate how targeted investments can stimulate economic growth and improve regional connectivity. 2. Energy access. Over 600 million Africans lack access to electricity, hindering industrialization and quality of life. Renewable energy solutions, including solar farms in the Sahel and wind power in Morocco, are pivotal to bridging this gap sustainably. 3. Digital connectivity. High-speed internet and reliable telecommunications infrastructure are vital for integrating Africa into the global digital economy. Investments like Google's Equiano subsea cable, which connects Africa to Europe, promise to enhance internet speeds and reduce costs. 4. Urban infrastructure. With Africa's urban population expected to double by 2050, UN Habitat, cities must be equipped with modern housing, sanitation, and transportation systems. Smart city initiatives in places like Kigali, Rwanda, showcase innovative approaches to urban planning. Financing Africa's infrastructure needs. The scale of Africa's infrastructure requirements necessitates diverse and innovative financing mechanisms. While external funding from bilateral and multilateral partners remains critical, African governments must also mobilize domestic resources and attract private investment. Potential solutions for infrastructure financing. Public-private partnerships, PPPs, collaborations between governments and private investors can leverage additional capital for large-scale projects. Examples include Nigeria's Lekki Deep Seaport, which is funded through a PPP model. Sovereign wealth funds, SWFs. Countries like Angola and Botswana have established SWFs to invest in infrastructure and other strategic sectors. Blended finance. Combining concessional funding from development banks with private investment can reduce risks and attract capital. Infrastructure bonds. Issuing bonds specifically for infrastructure projects, as done by Kenya and South Africa, provides governments with a sustainable financing option. Regional integration as a catalyst for growth. Regional economic blocs, such as the East African Community, EAC, and the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, are playing a pivotal role in driving cross-border infrastructure development. Flagship projects like the Trans-African Highway Network aim to connect African countries through an extensive road system, facilitating trade and mobility. The success of these initiatives, however, depends on political will and effective governance. Harmonizing policies, addressing security challenges, and ensuring equitable distribution of benefits are essential for sustaining regional cooperation. Challenges to infrastructure development. Despite the ambitious plans, Africa's infrastructure development faces significant challenges, including corruption and mismanagement. Weak governance often leads to project delays, inflated costs, and poor quality construction. Debt sustainability. Over-reliance on external borrowing for infrastructure projects has raised concerns about debt distress in countries like Zambia and Ghana. Environmental impact. Large-scale projects must balance development needs with environmental preservation, as seen in controversies surrounding hydropower projects like Ethiopia's Grand Renaissance Dam. A future-ready approach to infrastructure. To ensure long-term success, Africa must adopt a future-ready approach to infrastructure development. This involves integrating climate resilience, digitalization, and sustainability into project designs. For instance, green infrastructure such as solar-powered streetlights and energy-efficient buildings aligns with global climate goals while meeting local needs. Moreover, investing in human capital is essential for building and maintaining infrastructure. Training programs for engineers, architects, and urban planners can enhance local capacity and reduce dependence on foreign expertise. Africa's role in global infrastructure partnerships. Africa's infrastructure ambitions provide an opportunity for mutually beneficial partnerships with global stakeholders. China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, has played a dominant role in financing African infrastructure, but it has also raised concerns about debt dependency and transparency. To counterbalance this, Western nations have launched initiatives like the G7's Build Back Better World, B3W, which aims to provide sustainable infrastructure financing alternatives. For Africa, the priority should be to engage with all partners on equal terms, ensuring that agreements align with national and regional development objectives. This requires robust negotiation frameworks, clear accountability mechanisms, and a focus on long-term value creation. Industrialization. Africa's path to economic sovereignty infrastructure development lays the foundation for industrialization, a critical driver of economic transformation. Industrialization enables African countries to diversify their economies, reduce reliance on raw material exports, and create jobs. As global demand shifts toward value-added products, Africa has an opportunity to build competitive industries that cater to both domestic and international markets. Sectors with high potential for industrialization. 1. Agribusiness. Agriculture contributes significantly to Africa's GDP, but most exports remain in raw form. Developing agro-processing industries can add value to products like cocoa, coffee, and cotton, creating jobs and boosting export revenues. For example, Ghana's investments in cocoa processing are increasing its share of value-added exports. 2. Manufacturing. Establishing industrial zones and export processing hubs can attract foreign direct investment, FDI. Ethiopia's Hawassa Industrial Park, focused on textiles and garments, is a model of how targeted policies can drive manufacturing growth. 3. Mineral processing. Africa holds 30% of the world's mineral reserves, yet it captures little of the value chain. Countries like South Africa and Botswana are leading efforts to process minerals like diamonds and platinum locally, increasing their economic impact. 4. Renewable energy technologies. Africa's abundance of natural resources positions it as a potential leader in producing renewable energy components like solar panels and wind turbines. This would not only meet local demand but also serve export markets. Challenges to industrial growth. Despite its potential, Africa faces structural challenges that hinder industrialization. Infrastructure gaps, reliable power supply, efficient transport networks, and modern logistics are prerequisites for industrial growth. Skills deficit. Many African countries lack the technical and managerial expertise required to sustain industrial operations. Trade barriers. Fragmented markets, tariff disparities, and non-tariff barriers complicate cross-border trade and limit economies of scale. Access to finance. Small and medium enterprises, SMEs, which form the backbone of industrial activity, often struggle to secure affordable financing. Policy interventions for industrialization. To address these challenges, African governments must implement targeted policies. 1. Promoting industrial policies. Strategic industrial policies, such as Nigeria's Automotive Industry Development Plan, can attract investment and support local production. 2. Investing in technical education. Establishing vocational schools and technical institutes will equip workers with the skills needed for industrial jobs. 3. Leveraging AfCFTA. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, provides a platform to create regional value chains, enabling countries to specialize in specific segments of production. 4. Supporting SMEs. Governments can create financing mechanisms such as industrial development banks and credit guarantees to support small businesses. Technology-driven industrialization. The fourth industrial revolution offers Africa a chance to leapfrog traditional industrial pathways by integrating advanced technologies like artificial intelligence, robotics, and 3D printing into production processes. Countries like Rwanda, which is investing in smart manufacturing, are already taking steps in this direction. Partnerships with global technology firms can accelerate this transition while fostering technology transfer. Africa's role in the global supply chain. Geopolitical shifts and disruptions in global supply chains, such as those witnessed during the COVID-19 pandemic, have highlighted the need for diversification. Africa's strategic location, coupled with its resource endowments, positions it as an attractive alternative for manufacturing and supply chain relocation. For instance, companies in Europe and Asia are exploring opportunities to establish factories in Africa to reduce dependence on single-source suppliers. African governments must capitalize on this trend by creating favorable investment climates and streamlining regulatory frameworks. Balancing industrialization and sustainability. As Africa industrializes, it must avoid repeating the environmental mistakes of early industrializers. Sustainable practices, such as adopting circular economy principles and using clean energy, should underpin industrial development. Policies like Kenya's ban on single-use plastics demonstrate the continent's commitment to balancing economic growth with environmental stewardship. The global partnership dimension. Global partners have a role to play in supporting Africa's industrialization efforts. Initiatives such as the Compact with Africa, spearheaded by the G20, aim to attract private investment into African industries. Similarly, regional partnerships like the Africa-EU Green Energy Initiative can align industrialization with environmental goals. Africa's human capital, the engine of sustainable growth, industrialization, infrastructure, and technological advancement, will only be successful if underpinned by a robust human capital base. Africa's youthful population, projected to constitute nearly 50% of the global youth population by 2050, UNICEF, offers a unique advantage if adequately nurtured through education, skill development, and health investments. Strategic investment in human capital development. 1. Holistic education systems. Beyond basic literacy and numeracy, education systems must focus on critical thinking, problem-solving, and adaptability to meet the demands of an evolving global economy. Countries like Ghana and South Africa are integrating STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, into national curriculums to prepare future innovators and leaders. 2. Health as a foundation. Healthy populations are more productive and resilient. Expanding access to healthcare, particularly in rural areas, will reduce disease burdens and improve overall life expectancy. Community health worker models, as seen in Ethiopia, are cost-effective ways to bridge healthcare gaps. 3. Empowering women and girls. Closing gender gaps in education, employment, and health is essential for maximizing Africa's growth potential. Programs like Kenya's Linda Mama, which provides free maternity services, and scholarships for girls' education in Malawi, demonstrate how targeted interventions can create ripple effects. 4. Youth employment programs. With millions of young Africans entering the labor market annually, governments must invest in initiatives that create jobs while fostering entrepreneurship. Nigeria's NPower program, which provides training and employment opportunities for youth, is a promising example. Governance and leadership, driving accountability and progress. Economic transformation and human capital development require strong, accountable governance. While Africa has made strides in democratization, challenges such as corruption, political instability, and weak institutions persist. Addressing these governance deficits is critical for creating an environment conducive to growth and development. Strengthening governance frameworks. 1. Transparency and accountability. Leveraging technology to enhance transparency and governance can reduce corruption and improve service delivery. Digital platforms like ipitabribe.org in Kenya allow citizens to report corrupt practices, fostering greater accountability. 2. Judicial independence. A strong and independent judiciary is essential for upholding the rule of law and protecting citizens' rights. Judicial reforms in countries like Botswana, known for its low corruption levels, offer valuable lessons for the region. 3. Decentralization. Empowering local governments to make decisions and manage resources ensures that development initiatives are more responsive to community needs. Rwanda's decentralized governance model has been instrumental in driving rural development. 4. Youth and women in leadership. Encouraging the participation of young people and women in decision-making processes is essential for inclusive governance. Programs like Uganda's Youth Parliamentary Forums promote leadership development among young citizens. Regional cooperation, Africa's strength and unity. Africa's collective development hinges on effective regional cooperation. Institutions like the African Union, AU, and sub-regional organizations have been pivotal in addressing cross-border challenges and promoting economic integration. However, more needs to be done to strengthen these institutions and ensure their decisions translate into tangible benefits for member states. Key areas for regional action. 1. Conflict resolution. Ongoing conflicts, such as those in the Sahel and Ethiopia, undermine development efforts. The AU's Silencing the Guns initiative seeks to address the root causes of conflict and promote peace-building, but it requires greater commitment and resources. 2. Cross-border trade. AfCFTA offers immense potential for boosting intra-African trade, but implementation requires harmonizing trade regulations, upgrading border infrastructure, and reducing non-tariff barriers. 3. Shared resources. Collaborative management of shared resources, such as the Nile River Basin, can prevent disputes and foster sustainable development. Agreements like the Senegal River Basin Development Organization provide models for resource-sharing frameworks. 4. Pan-African identity. Cultural and educational exchanges can strengthen a sense of Pan-Africanism, fostering unity and cooperation. Initiatives like the African Passport, which aims to facilitate free movement across the continent, are critical for achieving this goal. Africa's voice on the global stage. As Africa rises, its role in global governance must evolve. The continent has long been underrepresented in decision-making bodies such as the United Nations Security Council, UNSC, and the Bretton Woods institutions. African leaders must continue to advocate for reforms that reflect the continent's growing significance in global affairs. Key priorities for global engagement. 1. Economic partnerships. Africa must negotiate trade and investment agreements that prioritize its development needs. For instance, partnerships under the EU-Africa strategy should focus on equitable trade terms and technology transfer. 2. Climate advocacy. Africa's role in climate diplomacy is increasingly vital. During COP27, African nations emphasized the need for adaptation financing, a message that must be amplified in future climate negotiations. 3. Peace and security. As Africa contributes to global peacekeeping efforts, it must have a stronger say in shaping global security policies. 4. Equitable debt solutions. Many African nations face debt burdens exacerbated by external shocks like COVID-19 and climate change. Advocacy for fair debt restructuring mechanisms and concessional financing is essential. The path forward. Africa at a crossroads. Africa stands at a pivotal moment in its history. The continent has the resources, talent, and potential to become a global powerhouse, but achieving this vision requires deliberate strategic action by its leaders. By addressing internal challenges, leveraging partnerships wisely, and fostering regional unity, Africa can chart a path towards sustainable development and prosperity. Advice to African leaders. 1. Prioritize people-centered development. Focus on improving the lives of citizens through investments in education, healthcare, and social welfare. Development must be inclusive, leaving no one behind. 2. Leverage regional integration. Strengthen regional institutions and fully implement AfCFTA to unlock the benefits of a united African market. Collaboration, not competition, should define relations between states. 3. Negotiate strategic partnerships. Engage with global powers from a position of strength, ensuring that external agreements align with Africa's long-term interests. Africa must not become a battleground for global rivalries, but a partner in shaping a better world. 4. Promote good governance. Fight corruption, uphold the rule of law, and create transparent institutions. Leaders must model accountability and integrity to gain the trust of their people. 5. Champion innovation and sustainability. Invest in technology and green infrastructure to future-proof the continent against economic and environmental disruptions. Africa should lead the world in sustainable development practices. 6. Empower the youth and women. The future lies in the hands of Africa's young population and women. Policies that support education, employment, and leadership for these groups will unlock the continent's full potential. Summary of key messages. Africa's opportunities, rich in natural and human resources, Africa has the potential to become an economic and cultural leader. The role of global partners. Partnerships with the West, China, and other global players must be approached strategically to avoid dependency and ensure mutual benefits. Regional unity. AfCFTA and other regional initiatives are critical to fostering economic integration and resilience. Sustainability and innovation. Balancing industrial growth with environmental sustainability and leveraging technology are essential for long-term success. Leadership and governance. Good governance, transparency, and accountability are non-negotiable for achieving meaningful progress. Conclusion. Shaping Africa's future together. Africa's destiny is in the hands of its leaders and people. By embracing a shared vision, fostering unity, and prioritizing the well-being of citizens, the continent can rise to meet the challenges of the 21st century. This journey requires courage, innovation, and a commitment to excellence. The world is watching, and the time for Africa to lead is now. The story of Africa's Renaissance is one that must be written by Africans, for Africans, and with Africans. Together, the continent can turn its aspirations into reality, setting an example for the world. Thank you for joining us on the Bold African Voice, BAV. If you found value in this analysis, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more bold takes on Africa's most pressing topics. Together, we amplify Africa's voice. See you in the next video. Don't forget to click the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time, stay bold.